There are dangerous criminals who walk free, not in shadows, but in daylight. Some drink espresso on balconies they built with blood money. Others kiss their grandchildren, while entire cities still whisper their names in fear. We think of the Mafia as a relic of the past. Black and white photos, old crime films, names buried in prison files. But what if we told you that the most dangerous Mafia bosses are still alive? Not in movies, but actually living their best lives. Some are behind bars but still in command. Others, untouchable. Their crimes so deep in the roots of government, justice bends around them. This isn't fiction. These are men who carved empires out of silence, who turned murder into business, who made fear a currency. And today we tell their stories, not to glorify them, but to understand how power survives, even when justice knocks on the door. Let's start. 1. Semion Mogilevich, the Invisible Billionaire. Imagine a man so powerful, so deeply entrenched in the shadows of global finance that entire governments fear naming him. A man whose fingerprints appear on billion-dollar frauds, weapons deals, political blackmail, and yet he walks the streets of Moscow, a free man, no disguises, no aliases, no fear. While other mafia bosses rule with guns and blood, he rules with silence, spreadsheets, and sovereign immunity. His enemies disappear. His allies become presidents. His reach extends from Eastern Europe to Wall Street. This is not fiction. This is Semion Mogilevich, the man the FBI once called the most dangerous mobster in the world, and somehow, he's still alive and still untouchable. Semion Yudkovich Mogilevich was born in Kyiv, Ukraine, in 1946 into poverty, into post-war chaos, and into a world where survival meant strategy. By the 1980s, he was running with the Lubitsy and Solntsevskaya Bratva, the brutal Moscow mafias. But unlike the others, Mogilevich wasn't chasing street power. He had a different gift. Numbers, language, patience. While others fought turf wars, Semion studied economics. His genius wasn't in bullets. It was in loopholes. He began laundering money for the Russian mob millions, then hundreds of millions. He ran fake art scams, tax schemes. He even sold magic gas meters to European governments' devices that never worked. He built front companies in London, New York, Tel Aviv, and Budapest. One of them, a firm called YBM Magnex, was even publicly listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Its value hit nearly $1 billion. Then it collapsed overnight. Investigators discovered it was a shell company for organized crime. The name behind it? Semion Mogilevich. In the 1990s, Mogilevich's empire expanded like a virus. He brokered arms deals between Russia and the Middle East. He trafficked nuclear material. He bought politicians, literally. He was behind weapons shipments to unstable regimes, behind murky energy deals that shook European markets, and behind assassinations that were never solved. But here's the twist. Every time authorities got close, something happened. Witnesses disappeared. Evidence was sealed. Cases were dropped. The FBI issued an arrest warrant in 2003. Interpol flagged him. But Russia refused to extradite. Why? Because by then, Mogilevich was no longer just a mobster. He was a strategic asset. With deep ties to Russian intelligence, financial institutions, and powerful oligarchs, Semion Mogilevich had become something far more dangerous than a crime boss. He had become untouchable. Over the years, journalists have tried to uncover the truth, but they hit walls or graves. In 2008, a brave few in Ukraine and Hungary began connecting his operations to high-level corruption in energy exports. Then, silence. Investigative files went missing. In 2009, the FBI added him to their top 10 most wanted list. And in 2015, he quietly disappeared from it. No arrest, no trial, just removed. Some say it was political. Some say he made a deal. The most terrifying part? We still don't know the full scale of what he built. Some say his laundering networks continue to operate, cleaning billions through cryptocurrency, offshore banks, and front businesses. Some say he's retired, but those who study global crime know better. Because empires like Mogilevich's don't retire. They evolve, and they wait. This is the world's most powerful mafia boss. A man with no tattoos, no body count in the tabloids, no turf war headlines. Just balance sheets soaked in blood. He never fired a shot. But he's broken nations. This is Semion Mogilevich, the Invisible Billionaire, still alive, still protected, still watching. 2. Mayo Zambada, the ghost of the Sinaloa Cartel. He was there before El Chapo. He was there during El Chapo's rise. And he is still here long after El Chapo fell. No photographs, no public videos, no confirmed sightings in over a decade. And yet, every drug route from Sinaloa to Chicago, every cocaine deal from Colombia to California, every fentanyl overdose in the suburbs of America carries his silent signature. He's been called the Phantom of the Sierra. He doesn't tweet. He doesn't show off cars, cash, or women. He doesn't get caught. His enemies are buried. His allies are presidents. This is Ismael Mayo Zambada, the boss of bosses, the ghost at the top of Mexico's drug war, and the most dangerous cartel leader still alive. Born in 1948 in the dusty town of El Alamo, Sinaloa, Mayo Zambada was not raised in power, but he learned early that in Mexico, power isn't inherited. It's taken. In his early 20s, he worked as a poppy farmer, helping process heroin in the rugged hills of the Sierra Madre. But Mayo wasn't interested in staying a farmer. By the 1980s, he had aligned with Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, the godfather of Mexican trafficking, and by the 90s, as the cartels split and warred, Zambada rose through blood and betrayal. When others sought fame, he chose silence. While El Chapo Guzman became a folk hero, El Mayo was quietly building a machine, a billion-dollar drug empire that could outlive everyone. He co-founded the Sinaloa Cartel, not just as a trafficker, but as a tactician, a negotiator, a warlord in a suit. Zambada has overseen the shipment of hundreds of tons of cocaine, marijuana, meth, and fentanyl into the United States. His cartel runs labs, airstrips, shipping lanes, and tunnels stretching under the U.S. border. His influence spans from Mexico's military to corrupt politicians in Honduras, Colombia, and Venezuela. He bribed the law enforcement at every level, judges, prosecutors, even informants. The price for betrayal? Decapitation, hanging from a bridge. Whole families erased, and yet Mayo never pulled the trigger himself. He doesn't have to. He has lieutenants, enforcers, politicians. In 2008, his own son Vicente Zambada Niebla was arrested and extradited to the U.S. Under oath, Vicente revealed that his father met directly with D agents negotiating partial immunity in exchange for intel on rival cartels. Let that sink in. A cartel boss meeting with U.S. agents, while still trafficking tons of narcotics. The DD denied it, but the case files tell another story. The cartel wars in Mexico have claimed over 300,000 lives since 2006. And while rivals like Los Zetas butchered cities with open brutality, Mayo preferred surgical violence. When he gave an order, bodies vanished. When he forged a deal, borders moved. When El Chapo was arrested, escaped, and then rearrested, it was Mayo who kept the cartel alive. According to U.S. intelligence, El Mayo Zambada has never spent a single night in jail. Think about that. The most senior narco still breath in has never been caught. He reportedly suffers from diabetes and lives deep in the mountains, surrounded by loyal men raised to kill. Helicopters sent to capture him are either shot down or misled. Villagers in Sinaloa won't talk. They revere him. He builds roads, pays school fees, buys medicine. And when federal forces come too close, they're met with ambushes. Convoys of sicarios with military-grade weapons. Not long ago, the Mexican government launched a full-scale raid to capture one of Mayo's successors, Ovidio Guzman, El Chapo's son. The result? Cartel gunmen forced the government to surrender. That wasn't just Sinaloa's power. That was Mayo's power. In the eyes of the D, he is the last great capo. In the eyes of the people, he is a ghost and a god. And in the eyes of history, he may be the most successful, most invisible, most feared drug trafficker the world has ever seen. His enemies are dead. His partners are presidents. His empire still floods American streets with poison. And he remains somewhere in the mountains, smiling, counting, and waiting. Ismael Mayo Zambada, the silent architect of narco-violence, alive, and never once in handcuffs. 3. Matteo Messina Denaro, the last godfather. They called him Diabolic, after an Italian comic book villain who never shows his face. For 30 years, he was a ghost, a myth in designer suits. a mafia boss who lived like a king while the world hunted his shadow. In the streets of Sicily, mothers warned their children with his name. Once his name was mentioned, every child was brought back to order. In Palermo's backrooms, his orders could silence judges, explode courthouses, erase families. And for decades, no one could catch him nor tell where he was. Matteo Messina Denaro wasn't just the last boss of Cosa Nostra, he was its darkest legacy, and for a long time, he was alive, free, and untouchable. Matteo was born in 1962 into Mafia royalty. His father, Don Ciccio, was a feared capo. His godfather? One of the most violent killers in Sicilian history. By 18, Matteo was delivering messages for hitmen. By 20, he was pulling the trigger himself. His first nickname wasn't diabolic. It was U-Siku, the skinny one, thin, charming, well-dressed, but always watching. Always calculating. At 26, he allegedly boasted, "I could fill a cemetery with the people I've killed." That wasn't bravado. It was a warning. In the early 1990s, Italy was at war with the Mafia, and the Mafia responded with terror. Judges Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, the heroes of Italian justice, were blown to pieces on the streets of Sicily. Car bombs, children killed, entire city blocks leveled. And behind it all was Matteo Messina Denaro, the mastermind, the planner, the ghost with blood on his cuffs. He ordered the kidnapping of a 12-year-old boy, the son of a mafia informant. The child was strangled, dissolved in acid. No trace, no mercy. That was Matteo's message. Talk to the state and your bloodline ends. But he didn't just kill, he evolved. When other bosses were arrested or gunned down, Matteo went silent. No phones, no emails. Just handwritten notes Pizzini passed through loyal hands. And while hiding, he built an empire, construction. Supermarkets, casinos, wind farms, billions laundered. Politicians bribed. Bankers bought. Cosa Nostra became less blood and more business. And Matteo was the CEO of silence. But here's the twist. Matteo loved luxury, expensive watches, tailored suits, surgery to fix his jawline. He was a fugitive, but he lived like a celebrity. Rumors said he lived in a villa under a false name. He had lovers across Europe. He dined in restaurants protected by silence and fear. He even went to the movies. While the world showed his face on wanted posters, Matteo watched The Godfather, laughing in the dark. For 3 decades, he slipped through every dragnet. The FBI, Interpol, the Carabinieri, all of them looking. He moved like smoke, changed identities, used cancer treatment clinics as hiding spot. And yet, people still obeyed him. His sister passed messages to lieutenants. His businesses kept running. Even in hiding, he ran the western wing of Cosa Nostra. And as other mafia clans collapsed, Matteo became the last true godfather. Then in 2023, something unbelievable happened. He was arrested, not in a jungle, not in a cave, but walking calmly into a private hospital in Palermo. Under a fake name, wearing $5,000 sunglasses. A life of murder and manipulation, ended by a quiet walk into chemotherapy. Some say he got careless. Some say he was betrayed. Others believe he allowed himself to be caught, to die on his terms. And he did. Matteo Messina Denaro died of colon cancer behind bars and was never tried for most of his crimes. But long before his death, the fear had already been planted. The silence. The stares. The thousands who vanished. You can kill a man, but you can't kill a meth. And in Sicily, his name is still whispered. Matteo Messina Denaro, the last godfather. The devil in designer glasses. And until his final breath, one of the most dangerous men alive. 4. Dawood Ibrahim, the king of smoke and fire. His name strikes silence in India. Dawood Ibrahim, son of a humble policeman, now the world's most wanted fugitive. A man who went from the crowded slums of Mumbai to building a billion-dollar underworld empire that stretched from Dubai to Karachi, from Bangkok to Johannesburg. And unlike the others, Dawood didn't just sell drugs. He trafficked terror, the kind that shakes cities, shatters families, the kind that leaves blood on the streets and fear in the hearts of millions. This is the story of a boy who became a smuggler who became a don, and a don who became a ghost. Dawood's story begins in Dongri, one of Mumbai's toughest neighborhoods. Born in 1955, second of 12 children, in a one-bedroom home. His father was a respected cop, and his brother even joined the police force as well. But Dawood? He had a different dream. By his teenage years, he had joined a street gang, stealing watches, roughing up shopkeepers, hustling contraband. They called him Bai, which means brother. But everyone knew he was nobody's little brother. He was rising fast, cutting down rivals, bribing police, buying loyalty in the narrow lanes of Bombay. He built his own gang, the D Company, and turned it into the most powerful criminal syndicate in South Asia. By 25, Dawood was already untouchable in Mumbai's underworld. Smuggling, extortion, contract killings. Dawood's D Company ran the city's veins like heroin, but he wanted more. In the early 1980s, the law was closing in. So Dawood vanished, escaping to Dubai, where he began the second phase of his criminal evolution. Now he wasn't just a thug, he was a businessman. He wore Armani suits, rubbed shoulders with Bollywood stars, hosted lavish parties in Dubai hotels. All the while, the real business continued in shadows: arms deals, fake currency networks, international drug routes across Asia, Africa, and Europe. From Dubai, D Company became a global mafia. And then came 1993. On March 12, 1993, 13 coordinated bomb blasts tore through Mumbai, killing 257 people and injuring over 700. The stock exchange, hotels, markets, buses, the city bled. The attack was revenge. After riots in 1992 killed hundreds of Muslims in India, Dawood wanted to send a message. And he did, with fire. Investigators traced the entire operation back to D Company. Dawood Ibrahim had planned, financed, and executed the most devastating terrorist attack in India's history at the time. And just like that, he crossed the line. He was no longer just a gangster, he was a global terrorist. India declared him enemy number one. The US added him to the list of global terrorists. Interpol issued a red corner notice, but he vanished again. This time, to Pakistan, where, according to intelligence sources, he was protected by the military and intelligence agencies. A man wanted by the world, living in mansions in Karachi. With a new name, new identity. Still pulling strings from the shadows. In Pakistan, Dawood's empire evolved again. He became a power broker, allegedly linked with Taliban leaders. Provided financing for terror networks, yet he remained invisible. No selfies. No phone calls, just whispers. And in India, his name became taboo. Bollywood filmmakers received death threats for even mentioning him. Politicians accused each other of harboring his allies. But no one could touch him. Every year, fresh reports emerged. He's dead. He's in Dubai. He's back in India. But every time, nothing. No one has been able to lay hands on him, so he remains the living ghost. He's been linked to every dark trade you can imagine. Cocaine out of Colombia. Heroin from Afghanistan, blood diamonds from Africa. He launders money through real estate, sports betting, and charities. Some say he controls banks, others believe he funds coups. What's certain is this: Dawood Ibrahim created a blueprint for the 21st century mafia, global, digital, political, and still breath in. As of today, Dawood Ibrahim is believed to be living in Pakistan under the protection of the state. India wants him extradited. The US wants him sanctioned. But he remains exactly where he wants to be. Hidden, powerful, alive. The king of smoke and fire. A man who used fear like currency. And built an empire no bullet could bring down. For now he remains a myth. But behind that myth is a man who still holds the keys to chaos. 5. Luigi Mancuso. Luigi can silence a village and an entire city. It began with a wedding. The bride was waiting impatiently. The guests were getting anxious because the DJ didn't show up. No explanation, no notification. Hours later, they found his body in a burned-out Fiat just outside Limbadi. Shot once, then set on fire. He wasn't the target. He had made one mistake. He took a job for a man on the wrong side of Luigi Mancuso. In this part of Calabria, it doesn't take much to get buried. A handshake with the wrong politician, a debt paid to the wrong banker, or simply not showing enough respect. Because here there is no police. There is only the uncle, Luigi Mancuso isn't your movie Mafia villain. He doesn't carry gold rings. Doesn't shoot people in nightclubs. He builds kingdoms quietly. No gunfire, just fear. Over 4 decades, he transformed his sleepy hometown into one of the most tightly controlled mafia zones in Italy. Not a leaf moves in Vibo Valentia without his blessing. You don't open a bakery, buy land, or marry outside your clan without permission. His rise began in the shadows of the 1980s, while the other mafia groups were making headlines for bloodshed. Mancuso did something more dangerous. He made the mafia invisible. He focused not on guns, but on structure. He mapped cocaine routes from South America, invested in shipping companies, and infiltrated public contracts in Calabria. But everything was done through proxies. You could live next to one of his killers and never know it. In the 1990s, a land surveyor named DiNardo Frusteri tried to report irregularities in government construction contracts. Within a week, he was missing. His body was never found. His daughter went to the police. The police told her, "You're better off forgetting." Because when you say Luigi Mancuso's name, you're not just taking on a man, you're taking on an empire. His most infamous legacy is the way he turned the Ndrangheta from a regional gang into a global business empire. At its peak, his clan was making millions per week in real estate, drug trafficking, and even renewable energy scams. He had politicians in his pocket, judges under his thumb, even Catholic clergy who asked his permission before planning charity drives. One undercover agent once asked, "Why don't people ever fight back?" And the simple answer was because we don't know where the mafia ends and the government begins. He was finally arrested in 2003, thanks to wiretaps and the cooperation of a rare turncoat. The prosecutors called it a triumph, but it wasn't over. In prison, Mancuso still ruled. Messages were passed through relatives. Orders delivered in code during Sunday visits. When he was released in 2012, he returned not as a fugitive, but as a celebrated patriarch. The entire town of Lombardy had changed hands while he was gone, and every new face owed him. Then came 2021. The Italian state finally said, enough. They launched Operation Ranascitascat, a trial so large they built a courtroom just for it. 325 defendants, 600 lawyers, 900 witnesses. All roads led to one man, Luigi Mancuso. He was charged with drug trafficking, murder, extortion, but also collusion with state officials, police chiefs, mayors, even parliament members. But even in court, Mancuso said little. He looked at the cameras with the same face he wore at that wedding years ago. Calm, blank, unbothered, because he knows something the court doesn't. You can jail a man, but not a legacy. His nephews are ready. His cousins already run contracts in Milan. And in Calabria, where the mountains echo with silence, people still cross the street at the mention of his name. He made the mafia invisible, and that's what makes him the most dangerous.